Thanks for joining me for video number 2 on parting the wild horse's mane. In this video, we're going to get into the core mechanics using my direction root power system. If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Todd Martin, creator of the Tai Chi Code. In the direction root power system, I analyze the upper waist rotation, which I call the direction because it often determines which way we're facing when we move. And then the root, which is our lower ab action that roots either one leg or the other to the ground. And then finally the power, which is the movement that comes from our hip joints, either hip flexion or hip extension, powering each of our movements. Every movement in Tai Chi, and in fact, when we walk in our daily lives, every movement has an element of direction, root, and power. And there's specific combinations of those movements that we use over and over again. In fact, there are 8 specific combinations of these movements that we use over and over, and that is what I call the Tai Chi Code. When we do parting the wild horse's mane, there are 3 specific core combination sequences that we're going to be using throughout the technique. And I'm going to go over each one of them, explaining the direction, root, and power. The first motion is the shift of weight to the right leg as the right arm begins to rise and the body begins to slightly turn to the left. When we do this first movement, we're turning the upper waist muscles to the left from our right side. So projecting the direction from our right side over to the left, and we're shifting the root, which is the lower abs, to the right. Now, when we do our horse stance from this step out with the left leg, our root as we lower is already going to be on the right. So I just have to change the direction from turning to the right, which is where it is initially, to the left. And that's going to begin the movement, and it's going to start shifting the weight over to the right leg. The power as we shift is going to be flexion of my left hip. So I'm essentially pulling up on the left hip or flexing the left hip in this manner. They're both the same thing. That's powering the movement. So direction turning to the left, root turning to the right, and hip flexion powering the motion. So that is the action that's preparing us to get into empty stance. Then we're going to switch the direction from turning left to turning right, and that is going to help us complete our movement and shift into empty stance. So once I hit this position, my upper and lower waist are turning to the right, and I'm flexing my left hip. That is what creates the ball carrying position. So this is 2 specific movements, 1 and then 2, required to get into the empty stance. Now we're going to step out with the heel by changing the root from right to left. I continued with left hip flexion, no change there, and I continued with clockwise rotation of the upper waist, no change there. Now to lower the forefoot and lower the stance further and wind the arms, I'm going to change the root back to the right. So essentially that's turning the belly button from left to right, and that lowers the forefoot and winds the arms up, and then I complete the shift into parting the wild horse's mane. When I do the shift into parting the wild horse's mane, the root is going to go from right to left, belly button from right to left, and the direction is going to maintain a clockwise rotation. So you can see the arm energy turning to the right with my left arm. That is being projected by the left side of my upper waist, turning around. And that is going to stay the same as the belly button pulls the body around to the left. So I'm still turning to the right with the upper waist as the belly button or root went over to the left leg. And so now I'm rooted on the left. The power for that motion comes from flexion of the right hip. You can think of flexion of the hip when we have the leg on the ground as either pulling forward. So think of your knee pulling forward rather than pushing off the ground. Or you can think of flexing the hip in this manner. As I flex the hip and rotate the root, it moves me to this new position. But this muscle here is creating the power. So direction is clockwise, root is turning counterclockwise, and power is flexion of the right hip. That is parting the wild horse's mane. So that completes my direction, root, power analysis of parting the wild horse's mane. In lesson number 3, I'm going to show you how the direction, root, power movements correlate with the 8 energies of Tai Chi, and then how we can use those 8 energies of Tai Chi to explain the parting the wild horse's mane technique. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and click right on over to lesson number 3 so I can explain the 8 energies portion of parting the wild horse's mane. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.